Hey world, welcome back to another episode of Be Inspired Podcast where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. I have another awesome guest here that is
Hey,
killing it
world,
in the real
welcome back
estate
to
market
another
and just working hard, creating her own company. She's not only a realtor, she builds systems, organizations, and just groups, and is the founder of Heirloom, a company that redefines inheritance not just for heirs but humanity. So, Alexa, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you for having me. This is so awesome. And I've known you for I don't know, 8, 10 years now at this point, I think.
Yep.
And it's been a long time since we've caught up. So I'm very excited to be having this conversation. I think if I were to go back and kind of just run through a quick journey, I started in real estate while I was in college and learned so much about people and negotiation and all the things. And I lost my dad to a stress induced heart attack when he was 51. That was in 2018. And he was a business owner. And that experience, the grief of it taught me a lot, but the his lack of estate planning really affected our family. And so I've been on this crazy journey of getting people talking about the thing that nobody wants to talk about, which is planning for our families and our legacy after we're already gone. And so the way that we do that is through the property because that makes up most of families' net worth. But truly it comes down to this psycho obsession about helping families build their legacy.
Okay. And I know that isn't it interesting how we find purpose in the most hardest times?
Oh
Because
yeah. You know,
I,
they oh,
yep.
well, I was just gonna say there's a quote that says, when you figure out how to make your worst day your best day is when you find your life's purpose, right? And so I think sometimes when we're taken to those lowest lows, uh, we can decide to be a victim in those spaces, or we can decide that this is gonna be the thing that this is gonna be the rock that your life gets built on. And that's a decision that we make. It's not something that happens to us. It's we decide this sucks, and I feel like I'm experiencing this so that no one else ever has to again.
Jeez. And you come on here ready to drop all the knowledge and the good
Well, thank you.
stuff. That's
I
so.
appreciate that.
What inspired you to become a real estate agent?
um, I laugh every time I tell the story, right? Because so I was in college. I was my sophomore year. I was the director of program board on campus, and prior to that, I my only plan was to go to law school, and I wanted to negotiate contracts for mergers and acquisitions and venture capital. That was the plan. And
Okay.
in my experience in student government, I dealt with administration and I dealt with bureaucracy and I dealt with red tape and I dealt with all the things, right? And I realized that I hated bureaucracy and I hated red tape. And I called my mom and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do because my whole life plan is ruined because I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to work with big companies and have to deal with 20 people to make one decision. And mom always knows best, and she was like, well, you could still negotiate contracts. You just do it at an individual level rather than as at the company level. And I'm like, really? How? And she's like, well, you could just get your real estate license and start there. And I was like, ew, I don't want to be a realtor. Only old ladies do that. And about 4 months later, I call her and I'm like, hey, mom, guess what? I'm getting my real estate license. And she's like, great job, honey. I'm so proud of you. And, I just think about that often because it's taken me on such a strange and unexpected journey. But that's really how it started.
Wow. Mom knows best always. That's the fact.
Yes, yes.
So,
Even when we don't want her to, somehow
yeah.
mom always knows best.
hmm So, what has been the most challenging thing for you being a real estate agent?
I think when I started at the very beginning, I was 20, so I'm 32 now, and I would do like
Congrats.
open houses and I would, what's that?
Congrats. Congrats. That's a long time.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, I would do like open houses and I was doing all the like typical lead generation stuff. And I would do open houses and like people would come in and they'd be like, this is a beautiful house, but like, are you even old enough to have a real estate license? Like consistently. It wasn't just like once or twice, it was like several times. And so I was like, okay, this is just not going to work, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to do it this way. And so, like, going back to this whole like mindset of, deciding, okay, well, this isn't working. So I'm going to pivot. I'm not going to abandon the plan. I'm just going to pivot the activities. And so I started creating content. I decided to focus on student rentals. At that time, because of my student government involvement, I had a massive network on campus and I had been building this email list that like I never used in my role, but I had been building it throughout the whole entire year. And I decided that I was going to start this whole student rental thing. I had no idea what I was doing and I was like figuring it out as I went. And I started email marketing and blogging and figuring out SEO and driving traffic and all these like weird random things. And that was like the beginning. And I think since then, every single time that I've decided to make a pivot in my business, it came down to like, who is the community that I want to serve? What are they like? What do they need? Like, where do they hang out? And how do I reach them? And so, like, focusing on those specific things and then serving them, not just like trying to sell them, like genuinely serving that audience. It's a blessing, but it's just as much of a challenge because sometimes people don't know how big the issue that they're experiencing actually is. And sometimes they just don't care, right? And so there's a lot of education that getting people to care about an issue really is like it's a challenge, but it's also a blessing. So I would say that.
And those three things are the most important things in marketing and building an organization
Mhm.
because you have to be
Absolutely.
able to connect with them and serve them, because people don't know how much you care. Um, People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely. Yes. 1,000,000%. Yes, I couldn't
So,
agree more.
yeah. So, what has been the hang on one sec. My screen froze. Sorry about that.
Yes.
What has been the
You're
moment in
good.
your business that you felt like you was gonna throw in the towel or quit? Has there ever been a moment like that?
Several, like literally dozens, like probably hundreds at this point. You know, that's a very hard question because I feel like there's so many. Um, and this is why it comes down. So like, okay, so in order to answer that question, I think I need to take a sort of detour, right? Because
Okay.
to understand like when we're saying like, okay, am I willing to give up this thing? Like that's why having a why is so important, right? Like you have to know why you're doing it because at any given point you can decide to give up. Like I've had difficult clients. I've had like in when were really focused on growing our agent system side, I had another company that was literally selling my product with my pictures on it, my face, like literally everything. And so it really comes down to, I think, for there's literally like a million. I had a friend that when my dad passed, she started stealing my clients. Like, I mean, it- there any of those opportunities could have been times where I could have decided to quit, but like that's not who I am. And I know that the purpose that we're working towards is bigger than my hurt feelings or my ego. So, yeah.
Yeah, that why must have been strong, really strong. And what is that keep you going?
um when my dad passed, so I spoke to him Saturday morning. He was healthy, right? Like it was never the concept of losing a parent was so abstract to me that like it just didn't process in my mind. And like people would say they lost a parent and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you're just kind of moving through life in this sort of oblivious state until you join this club that you never asked to be part of, but somehow when you meet somebody else who's also lost a parent, there's like just an instant bond that you have because life changed. Like life is literally never the same after you've lost someone that close to you, right? And so in going through that, like I did my dad's eulogy when after he passed and I was working with clients, I would take my clients by the hands from the closing table to the estate planning attorney's table. And I'd be like, hey, like, congratulations on the home, but now it's time to do your estate planning. And oh my God, people would kick and scream and throw a temper tantrum. And I would be like, this is what happens if you don't estate plan, right? And I would tell them my family story and how miserable that was for us, and they'd be like, okay, fine, you know. And I started working with clients that were inheriting property, and I realized how many issues that they run into that a typical real estate transaction just doesn't face, right? It comes with all of these loaded emotions. It comes with conflict between siblings that, and you're on the therapy side, right? So like this is going to resonate really deeply with you. Like one of the things I see the most is, you know how there's like this whole attachment theory, right? Like with like avoidance and anxious attachment and secure attachment and dismissive avoidance and fearful avoidance and all these things, right?
Mhm.
Well, we know that most of those attachment styles started when in their life?
At a younger age.
In childhood, right? And those
Yep.
dynamics started because of their relationship with who?
Their parents.
Yes. So now you're seeing that these attachment styles show up in the most raw possible way, right? Like you're seeing it in between siblings where three siblings that were raised by the same parents but had completely different experiences, how one sibling is so avoidant, one sibling is so anxious, and one sibling is leans either way or is sometimes secure. But those like attachment style things and like the psychology that comes out of this blows my mind. So I think I'm getting off track here, but to
Mhm.
answer your question about like where the why comes from, it's like if I don't do this and I don't get people to understand the significance of preparing for your legacy and helping them transition that legacy, then like people are going to continue getting taken advantage of. They're going to continue losing wealth, right? They're going to continue becoming this statistic. And so it really felt like that was God's purpose, that he kind of like sprinkled the fairy dust on me and was like, this is your thing. Go do
You're
it.
gonna do it.
I didn't have it wasn't a choice. It just kind of like aligned that way. And I was like, okay, your will.
Wow. So you talked about the different types of personalities. So did you have to take a course, or how were you able to start working with those people? How did you gain the knowledge and experience to work with them? That's the question.
um Experience, right? So doing this for 12 years, you learn a lot about people. And in real estate, you know, they say don't mess with people's money, their home, or their family. And I'm like blah, 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 and all of them, right? And so there's that piece of it. I'm really fascinated by human nature. I've read a lot, and when I started like learning or started seeing on social media, like the concept of attachment theory, I went and read like a couple books about it, and then I started realizing how much it shows up in family dynamics alongside of grief. And so like it was genuine curiosity, I think, more than anything. It was the like, this is interesting, and I see this show up in a way that most people don't talk about, and being able to kind of adopt those types of things into our practice.
Nice. Okay. So let's say somebody's watching this episode right now and they're going through the hardship of losing a family member. What advice would you give them?
Um, so we have a framework. It's 5 steps, and we call it our state transition framework. And so I would say that most families do maybe one, maybe rarely do two of them. And it's important to do them in order. So the first one um, is closure. And the funeral does not count. The funeral is not enough, right? Because in a lot of cases, when you lose somebody, and by the way, I just want to preface, we deal with inherited property, but we also do a ton of senior transitions, and that is the framework is the same. The emotions are a little different, but it's still very much the same. So, for example, in a family that mom or dad has dementia or Alzheimer's, the technically they're still here, right? But you're grieving the version of them that you remember. And so having to say goodbye to someone you love while they're still alive is very difficult, right? It's different, but it's still a form of grief. And so there's the grief that comes with the loved one, the loss of the loved one, and there's the grief that comes with the property. Now, I think the important thing to highlight here is the fact that for most of us, right, growing up in that childhood home is what holds most of our best memories. It's how we celebrated our birthdays, it's how we celebrated traditions and holidays. That closet when you lose mom and it's the only place that you can go that still smells like her, it feels like a shrine, right? Like that, those are the things that the inheritance industry forgets because they're focused on the legal and the financial and the logistics and all those things. But at the end of the day, the cliche, like home is where the heart is real, right? So families need to grieve. We need to change the way that we grieve. We need to not give employees 3 days of bereavement and expect them to come back to work and be normal. Like that's not human nature, right? Like every religion and society that we know of has some form of protocol for grief, and it's typically around 30 or 40 days. And so like America, we just don't grieve well. So like it starts there. Then we go into the curation of the stuff in the property. Hire professionals. It's not cheap, but it will save the family. Truly, I cannot stress that enough. More siblings end up never speaking again over property than anything else. Anything else. The conflict over a property is actually the number one cause of sibling disputes during the probate process. Number one, right? We don't talk about that part. So, like, making sure that closure is acknowledged, going through and cleaning out the property with professional help, insanely important. So that's curation. That's part two. So closure, curation. The next one is clarity. A lot of families, one sibling wants to sell the property, one sibling wants to keep it, right? One sibling wants to rent it. And so everybody's making decisions based on emotions. They're trying to use logic, but because of the grief aspect, their logic is a little cloudy. And so we take them through the process of helping the family decide what is the best legacy decision for them. So that takes us through number three, clarity. Then we go into completion, and that's the actual sale of the property. And so a lot of times families will say, like, oh, well, I have a realtor, right? But if you notice, selling the property is step 4 of our process, right? So all this other stuff that happened beforehand is why we're able to successfully help these families transition, because we didn't skip those steps. Step 4 is the completion, the actual sale of the property. And then step 5 is what I call the coronation. And so that is where, when you lose mom or you lose dad, right? There's a hole that gets ripped in the family, and making sure that the family knows how to transition that and knows what role everybody plays. That's what we call the coronation. And so to answer your question, it's go through the process. Even if you don't hire us, go through all of those steps in that order, and it makes a difference. So I know that was long-winded, but I hope that
No,
got
I appreciate the breaking it down so our viewers can understand what they're getting into, and then also see how you work as a realtor and a person that helps with the transitions.
Absolutely.
So grief and transitions is a lot of emotions, a lot. Uh, so tell me, how do you handle and deal with your self-care, dealing with all of that stuff?
That is like I am psychotic about it. How about that? That's really important to me. I know that so I'm of the belief that life is a mirror of us, right? And so whenever something happens, right, something that I don't agree with or something that triggers me, I always look at, like, what in my life is this mirroring back to me, right? And so, like, when I notice that my clients are feeling emotionally chaotic, I instantly look back at myself. And it typically comes down to, because I haven't been prioritizing my self care, that my energy is chaotic. So they're mirroring that back to me. And so when I'm at peace and when I'm centered, my clients are too, right? Like, so from that perspective, it's that when I say like it is survival for me to practice self-care, I genuinely mean that. How I do that, I mean, making sure that I get my sleep is very important to me. I get hangry often. I'm like a kid when it comes to my food and my sleep. Like if I don't sleep, I'm not a nice person. If I sleep, happiest person in the world. So sleep, I mean, make sure I get my nutritious meals in, um, making sure I get my workouts in, not every day, but like at least 4 times a week. Like, and if it doesn't happen in the morning, it's not happening. That just has a lot to do with my energy, my clarity of mind, and I've been doing it for so long that like
Mhm.
it's just part of my routine. Um, Having really strong boundaries around my calendar is a big one for me, and do like finding joy, doing like having hobbies that like you genuinely enjoy is very important. Like
Yeah.
I think that we've so glorified the hustle culture that like it's just destroyed people's happiness and it's held us back more than it's ever helped us. So find more joy. I think that's the answer.
I like that. And then I also like you talked about hustle culture a little bit because what I'm realizing now, we are supposed to align with our
Mhm.
goals. And it's a different energy versus hustling and
Yes.
just going 24/7. When you're aligned, it's more easy. It goes in flow. So
Mhm.
I appreciate you bringing up that.
Oh
That's
my god,
important.
this is, like, one of my favorite topics on the planet, okay? Because there's this whole thing, like, hustle culture is literally operating from a place of lack, right? And so, if we think about we attract who we are, not what we want, right? And so, when we think about who we're being, that is more important than what we're doing, right? So, I think about, like, a lot of times, I remember when I first started, like, networking and first started, like, being in society, if you will, and I remember like being super young, but being like, no, like this, I'm going to belong here. And for a long time, it was like observing and studying and learning how to embody the energy of like moving in those spaces. Right. And so now, 12 years in, right, I see people come into like these spaces and they're like, this is the good old boys club or whatever. And it really comes down to like going back to what you said is it comes down to a lack of alignment. And it's not about being inauthentic. It's like, if this is what I want, who do I have to become in order to align with that? And so, like, shedding the ego that says, okay, well, this is who I am. Is it really who you are, or is that just a trauma response, right? Is that
Mhm.
really who you are, or is that just your ego? Right? Like those are the things that you're like when you put all of that aside and you're like, I actually am like I'm a kind person. I'm a curious person, right? Like those are the things that are actually who I am. But like the random things that we allow to make us feel like we don't belong, those are not who we are. Those are just things that we just either a skill that we lack
Yeah.
or a mindset or a belief behavior that we just haven't embodied yet. So I love this conversation.
And shoot, you talk about belief and mindset a lot.
Yeah.
So how important is that for you to become successful?
Oh my god, it's everything. You literally have to like, in order to build a company, you have to be, like, semi delusional, like, I'm not exaggerating. You literally have to be so delusional that you think that you have to be crazy enough to believe that this thing in your head that doesn't exist, that somehow it's gonna exist and people are gonna pay you for it, right? Like, there has to be this supernatural delusional belief that it can be done, and then it has to be paired with, like, this like psychotic focus on moving forward, not necessarily around hustling, right? It's not about more hours, but it really is about like having the discipline to continue doing the things that are going to get you the results, even when it doesn't always feel like it. And it's again, it's not about always doing more, it's about being more efficient and more effective in the things that you are doing. So, mindset is everything. Like, without mindset, nothing else matters.
Yeah, for real. Because I was reading this book. It's called 10x is easier than 2x, and it aligns with the do less to make more.
Mhm,
So I like what you said, and just it further solidifies that you don't have to work 24/7. You could take breaks. You
mhm,
can you can have a vacation. You can work 3 hours a day and then go enjoy your family for the rest, you know. But it's all about that discipline initially, that discipline and alignment to get you
mhm.
to where you want to
Yeah,
go.
there's this, I think it's from, the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, and it talks about this concept called counterbalance, right? Like, most people try to operate like this, like, they want their work and their family to be, like, perfectly balanced, but that's just not reality, right? Like, when you're starting a new company, you're gonna work a lot more than you usually do because you're starting something new, right? Once you get into sort of a space of momentum, and you've identified these are the two or three things that actually move the needle, and you have the ability to leverage and offload some of the other stuff, that is when you get to start like getting your time back. But I think this like, we expect starting a business to be easy. We expect doing something new to be easy when that's just not reality, right? Like, there's a reason that the stats show that like 80% of businesses fail in the first, what, like 3 years or something like that.
Mhm.
And so, like, why do we think that we're so special that we can break that those statistics without working really, really hard? Like, I don't, to me, that like, that's wild, but it shouldn't always be like that. So then we focus on work, right? And we're like, this is the priority for right now. And so maybe family is a little out of balance for the short term. But then once we start hitting that momentum, we go back and we focus on family, and maybe work doesn't have to be such a priority. But it's not as simple as saying, always like, okay, every single day I'm going to have this exact amount of time for family and this exact amount of time for business. If you're launching a new product, a project, or a new product, or a new company, or you're hiring somebody, or you have a really difficult client, all of those things are going to take more time. But being flexible to say, I got to get out of balance, but I will counterbalance when it's time.
That's 100% true. I like how you break it down. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I remember you telling me a story, and mind you, we knew each other for almost 10 years, like you said,
Mhm.
working out together, all that good stuff. Met you through Simeon,
Yep.
but you told us a story one time of your mom seeing you doing flips on the couch, right?
Mhm.
Because for everybody that doesn't know, Alexa was a gymnast.
Mhm.
So you was doing flips on the couch, and she started to scold you, but then she realized what you was doing. How important was that moment and your current success? How did it shape your current success?
Oh, man. So I did gymnastics for like 10 years. My mom was a gymnast judge and coach for 13 years when in her childhood and going into her adulthood. And so, I mean, I at first, when I was flipping, like, okay, so if you have a gymnast, like, you know how boys that play basketball, right? Like, they're like every 5 seconds, like shooting a hoop or shooting paper into the trash can, right? And they're like doing the little shoot move and all the things, right? In gymnastics, it's very annoying because you're standing on every chair, you're like flipping onto every bed, like it's like it's out of control, right? So it she actually when she started to realize that like I loved gymnastics and I was addicted, my mom was super supportive. So like she got me like a mat, and then she got me like a low beam to like practice on, and like having a support system is everything. Like I went on to coach and everything and I loved it, but I think those early days of having someone in your corner that is gonna question you, right? Like, just because someone supports you doesn't mean they're never gonna ask questions, doesn't mean they're never gonna doubt you, but they can still be super supportive. Um, it's everything. So, like, but all you really need is one person who's gonna say, "You can do this."
Yeah. Yeah. And then that brings us to like support systems and success
Yep.
because you need people that believe in you to help you get to that next level. So, how important is your circle around success?
I have literally had this is like the third time today I'm having this conversation, which is wild. And this is not a conversation I have often, but somehow today on a Sunday, I've had this conversation 3 times.
We're
So I
in
was
alignment.
yeah, seriously. Um, the 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 cliche, like you become the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. So
Hmm.
true. It's crazy because like we call them cliches and we roll our eyes at them, but they're true. Like they became cliches because they're actually true, right? So like this particular one, I think about like when we used to do our Saturday workout group, right? Like that is a good example, right? Like when you spend time around a group of people and everybody's working out, everybody is eating healthy. We all did a Spartan race together, right? Like those are the things that we all had a goal to work towards. We all held each other accountable, and everybody in that group got in better shape just because we decided to do it together, right?
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, let's say you're the one friend that's in shape and you have all these great routines, but the other 5 people around you are like, oh, it's 7 o'clock. It's only Tuesday. Let's go out for a drink, right? And so you end up staying out late. You then lose sleep. You probably are not drinking enough water. You oversleep, so you miss your workout on Wednesday, right? And then your friends are like, oh my God, yesterday was crazy. Let's do it again on Thursday, right? And so these little things that we almost like we conform without realizing it, become
Yeah.
these things that break our good habits just because we're around people who are not supporting them, right? So like it works both ways. It can work to your benefit or it can work to your detriment. And so like being psychotically selective about the people that you spend your time with is so important, not just for yourself, right? Not just for your
Mhm.
goals, but if you're going to build something that changes people's lives, like you have a responsibility to do everything you can to make sure that you're continuing to grow. And so like having people who are going to challenge you and call you out when with love of course, but call
Yeah.
you out when you're like you're slacking or you're off, and they're going to notice when, your energy is different. People who care enough like that, like those people, hold on to them for dear life because my God, like it's everything. Those are the people that show you how you're showing up in the world, and without
Yeah.
them, we're just kind of operating in the blind, and we don't actually have someone to give us feedback on like, hey, this is working. Keep doing more of this, or hey, like you're slacking here, or hey, you can do this better. Like that's love, is loving someone enough to want them to reach that full potential.
True. Yeah. And then it's all about just keeping your circle tight, just
Yes.
editing your circle all the
Mhm.
time.
Yes.
If they're not aligning with your values, your goals, it's just editing. Not that you're trying to be better than other people,
No.
but it's just you're trying to get to a certain place and you got to keep that circle tight in order to get there.
Yes, yes. One of my main things is, like, integrity, right? Like, I don't care who you are, the first time that I see that you don't have integrity, like, you like, I can't spend time with you anymore because I truly believe how you do anything is how you do everything. And so, like, um, I have this thing about, like, um this is gonna ruffle some feathers, but people who code switch, I genuinely trust less simply because of the fact that they're not authentic in how they show up across their different communities. To me, that is something where um, you cannot live in two versions of yourself. So if you can't figure out how to integrate the different sides of yourself to find the authentic version, there I'm gonna trust you a little less. I'm gonna kind of, keep you a little at a distance because that just tells me that you're not fully embodied in who you say that you are. So, like, those are the types of things that I kind of observe.
Forgive me a little bit, but what is code switch?
So, okay, I'm glad I'm glad that you brought that up. You know when, like, you're there's one version of you that, like, shows up when you're around your friends, and then you're a completely different version of yourself, like, at work, right? They call it the customer service voice or all these things. Like, you just become 2 separate versions of yourself depending on who you're around. Like, it's not to say, right, that you're not gonna have a different depth of relationship with, like, your best friend versus your clients. But if I run into you somewhere out in public but I know who you are in different spaces, like you should at least come across as the same person. And to me,
Yeah.
that's one of those things where I just like major red flag when people are completely different in different environments.
Okay. And now I get it. I was like, Code Switch.
Yeah.
Thank you for breaking that down because I'm sure somebody else had the question too.
Yeah, no, great question.
So this is gonna be a little challenging one, right? And the way how I came to this question is this week was my fasting week because every month I try to do like a weekend fast,
I
36
love
hour
that.
fast, just water, just to get my mind right, my body, and reset my system, right?
Yes.
So I was running, did my 8 miles, and I was thinking about what to ask Alexa to keep the audience engaged. And this one came up, right? So the question is, tell me about a time that jeez. Tell me about a time that you had a silent fear or challenge that you have been dealing with that no one knows about, but you still show up with your head high every day, walking in purpose.
Um, this is one that I'm not going to say nobody knows because my team knows, and it's something that like I've been more public about. Um, Firstly, is I'm a super loner. Like naturally, I'm very much a loner. Like I love people, but I recharge by myself. Um, and in that is the concept of content creation. I have so much fear, anxiety every time that I come on camera that like it's like all day today. Like went to church, I'm like meal prepping, and I made brownies with my godson a few hours ago, and all day today I'm like, oh man, like I have to be on camera later today. And like I have a rule that once I record something, I don't go back and re-listen to it because if I go back and listen to it, it's never going to get posted because I'm going to analyze and like, oh, I could explain this better and this could have been more concise and I overanalyze, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where you just kind of like protect it from yourself, you know, like I have someone who edits my videos so that I don't have to go and edit them myself because if I do that, it will never get posted, right? So
Yeah.
like but as a rule of thumb, if I record it, I'm not going back to re-listen to it. Like one of these days I'll probably have to outgrow that, but for the time being, if I'm going to create content, I'm not going back to re-listen to it because it will never get posted.
I got you. Okay, that makes sense. Because I struggle with the same thing, similar. When I first started making videos and started doing
Mhm.
stuff like this, I would go back, look at it. No, this ain't said. I ain't said it right. And
Yep.
then I just got to the point where post it. Somebody,
Yep.
the message is gonna get to the person that it needs to, no matter
Absolutely.
what.
Yeah, and that's exactly like the my mindset now. I just don't go watch it. So, as long as I don't go watch it, we're good, and it's gonna get posted and some like and I think the concept of, like, the content that I've spent the least amount of time on is the content that performs the best, which is so annoying because, like, you spend, like, hours on a piece of content and, like, nobody engages with it, and you're like, "Why is the algorithm like this?" Right? And then you, like, spend 1 minute creating something and it goes viral and you're like, "Really?
Yeah,
Really?" You know? So and for me, it comes down to it's not so much about the, like, over analyzing of myself as it is I end up feeling what I call a vulnerability hangover after I create too much content, where it's like you feel like you've shared so much, and because you're sharing it with literally a camera, and
yeah,
you're basically saying, "I don't know how this is gonna land with people, but hopefully it resonates with somebody." And then you're like, "Okay, I know I'm an expert, but the internet is mean. Like, the internet is really mean," right? So that vulnerability hangover comes alongside of what I'm realizing is a fear of being seen, right? And so it's this like constant urge to self-sabotage by being inconsistent. Um, that like I'm constantly having to fight. So that is by and far the biggest thing for me that I'm like really working on.
okay. Hey, we're all a work in progress. None of us is
Absolutely.
perfect.
No, yeah, definitely. So, and you know, sometimes I think like focusing so much on self-awareness is a curse in itself, right? Because then you're never fully just like present and enjoying the moment, because you're like, okay, is there a way I can be doing this better? Is there some improvement that I can make in this? And so there's that.
So we got a few more questions
Okay,
before we wrap up.
perfect.
But one of the things I want to ask is, what are some books that you have read that got you to this point that could
Oh my
help
God.
some people?
So many. Um, my first suggestion before you even pick a book, it first two suggestions. I have an Echo in my bathroom. It's like $30 on Amazon.
Yeah.
And when I'm in the shower and I'm getting ready, I listen to audiobooks. So instead of listening to music, I listen to audiobooks. And that has gotten me through so many books. It's insane. And then the second thing is like, I can list off 5 million books. Um, but really, it's not about like what is the best book. It's like what is the area that you need to grow in the most, right? So like if you are focused on improving your messaging and your branding and your conversion rate for your funnels, like my two favorite authors are like Alex Hermosi and Russell Brunson. Like they've taught me so much about marketing, messaging, all the things, right? If you're thinking about like business modeling, right? There's I always mispronounce his last name, Mike Michalowicz, I think, from Profit First, and um, and Profit First, and he did Buy Back Your Time, I think. Another in business modeling is Built to Sell. Loved that book. Let's see. If you want to understand human nature,
Yeah.
Robert Greene, any of his books are amazing. They're insanely long, like insanely long, but I promise you, you will be able to read people in like zero point 0.2 seconds after you read all of his books. If you want to understand the economy, like Ray Dalio. So there's like it's like it depends on what you want to learn and what area of your like self that you want to focus on. Um, that's the real thing. It's not about the book. It's like
Yeah.
what is the area you need to grow in, and then like how do you consume as much as you can around that area. Audible and doing it in the shower, 10 out of 10 recommend it.
Wow. And one of the persons that, because you're the second person that I heard that talk about Alex for Moisey, because I'm working on building the funnels and all that good stuff. So it's interesting that you brought it up again too. So I'm really gonna check that one out.
I would say like Russell Brunson is my favorite, and Alex Hermosi learned a lot from Russell Brunson. And it's the concepts are similar, but they're explained differently. So I do recommend like they're similar, but read them both because that level of reinforcement, my God, like you're going to be a weapon, and it's crazy how your brain starts to rewire. Like my thing is, if there's something that I need to learn or like an area that I know that I'm weak in, I'm going to go read 5 books about it. And some people are like, that sounds crazy. If you do it on Audible in the car while you're driving and in the shower, it like you get through them so quickly. Like instead of listening to garbage music, listen to something that's actually going to grow you. And like all of a sudden, you're like, wow, I didn't even know I knew that. Audible.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because the first person I heard say, take off the music and turn it into like an office or a library in your car was David
Yeah.
Wood, and
Oh.
he was in Power Network. So it just stick with me today, and I
Mhm.
listen to podcasts. I try to learn while I'm on the way versus listening to the music because
Yeah,
it definitely helps you grow.
without
100%.
question.
So I like this question. This is my favorite question because a whole bunch of things could come up, right? So, what's one thing that you wanted to talk about, but you did not get the opportunity to share?
I feel like there's so much in my brain right now. Um, I would say that, like, going back to the whole attachment styles thing, like,
Mhm.
the things that we don't heal don't just affect us. They don't just affect, like, our partner, they get carried through generations. And so because of the work that I do, And I get to see the wealth transfer, right? Like there's a statistic that shows 70% of wealth is gone by the second generation, 90% is gone by the third, right? And so almost every culture has a proverb around that. So like in America, we say like shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in three generations. In the Irish culture, they say clogs to clogs in three generations. In the Chinese culture, they say rice patties to rice patties in three generations. So like this is where when I'm saying like the cliches are true, the proverbs are true, and somehow we're so arrogant as humans that we think that these things don't apply to us. And so it's not about the when I talk about legacy, I mentioned the wealth aspect because that is the external like indicator that we can track, right? But really what it comes down to is that the families that transfer legacy, transfer wealth well, it's not about the money. They pass on healed energy. They pass along values, and they pass along like a family culture that is what gets passed on, and the wealth is a byproduct of those things, and we don't talk about that enough because it feels fluffy. It feels like this thing that is like it doesn't feel tangible. But that is the thing. Like if we're going to spend an entire lifetime working so hard for our families, let's make sure that they're set up so that what we built compounds and grows, not ends up declining. So that would be my little spiel for the end here.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing. And I guess I would ask this, what would you recommend people start doing to help heal that trauma so they could be able to listen to those proverbs or those warning and not repeat history? Because it seems like we're used to doing that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And like the hardest part because again, in the work that I do, right, we're dealing with generations. So like mom or grandma or great grandma, like estate planning is like foreign to them, right? Like they don't want to talk about it because to them, it a lot of families are like, "Oh, what are you going to do? Kill me?" Like they think that having conversations about this is like foreshadowing their death. But the reality is, and my it's so ironic that my dad used to say this, right? He used to always say, "There's only two things that we have to do in life, and they are pay taxes and die."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if those are the two things that we have to do in this lifetime, we should probably plan for those so that our families continue. And so I think it's this like focus on continuing to pursue the best version of yourself, but also making sure that we don't just think about like our immediate family being today. We think about like how we're handling conflict, how we're handling conversations, apologizing more. My God, the amount of families that literally just if they apologize to each other, they would be in a whole different space. Like those are the things. And there's nothing abstract about it. Just talk to your family, have conversations, hard conversations. And I think that that's the start.
Yeah, for real, because apologies go a long way. And that could
No
be the
kidding.
one thing that a person needed to
Yeah, have
move forward.
closure, heal, move on, like all the things.
Yeah. So, how can someone connect with you if they want to get in touch with you to whether connect or go through a hardship or just connect with you in general? How would they
Yeah.
do?
Absolutely. My 2 favorites are Instagram and LinkedIn. So, LinkedIn, I talk a lot to the professionals that serve the inheritance space. So, like attorneys, financial advisors, CPAs, that's kind of my target audience there. And then on Instagram, I talk to families mostly. And there's a bunch of like random personal stuff that, like, I love my family and things like that. So, those two places. We launched our platform recently where families can actually log in and start focusing on like preparing that legacy transition. There's a free version, and then if you decide to get the premium version, it's one payment of $97. So I highly recommend that. I built the platform because of all the issues that we see in families, and if they take the time to go through and do the exercises, like their families will heal as a result of that.
Yeah.
So that would be the best way.
Thank you. All
Awesome.
right. So I'm also going to put it down here in the description. But if you guys been watching this episode and you love it, go ahead and the message resonated with you, go ahead and like, share, comment, shout out Alexa, ask for any questions you need. And then I just want to give a quick shout out to Creative Dream Collective. She completes our flyers every week. So go ahead and look her up on Facebook, Instagram. I also put her on this video as well. So you could connect with her if you're looking for flyers, you know? So,
Awesome.
Alexa, I want to thank you for coming on here, sharing your heart, sharing your experience and your company with us. Look forward to having more conversations and building more and seeing more of your success. So,
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Like, this was awesome. I mean, there's so much in this space that like I wish that I just wish that families would have more conversations, more hard conversations, and I'm just grateful that you gave me the opportunity to share that today.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Maybe we'll have you back again, sharing more of insights and what you deal with on a daily basis. Because
Awesome.
there's also another aspect of your life of digging into family life and dealing with family as a woman and success. So that's a whole nother story and a whole nother topic. But I'm sure we can
Absolutely.
get to it one day.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. That would be awesome.
Awesome. So
Yay.
until next time, everyone, go ahead, like, share, comment, and we'll see you on the next episode of Be Inspired, where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve.
Yay, awesome. Thank you. Bye.